no less than the President has called attention, serious concern about the increasing frequency and intensity of actions that are happening in West Philippine Sea. Kaya nga po, we're calling on China that to cease and restrain from this. What we're seeing at this point in time is the lack of congruence between what is actually being said, what is being announced, and what is happening on the ground or on the seas. So there has to be some congruence so that our relations can actually move forward.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
Let's start with the Masungi Geo-Reserve Foundation raising alarm over a supposed ocular inspection conducted by the Bureau of Corrections personnel on the area.
This inspection was allegedly conducted for the relocation of the new Bilibid prison. Here's what we know. In a statement, Masungi reports that 20 Bucor personnel went to the Geo Reserve at 6 a.m. on Thursday with orders to conduct an inspection of the, quote, relocation site of the new Bilibid prison. The men supposedly had a newly minted title covering 270 hectares of the Lot 10 property in the name of Bucor. The remaining 30 hectares of Lot 10 were reportedly titled under the name of the DENR. Masungi stressed in their statement their strong condemnation of the move, noting that Lot 10 is home to fragile limestones and formations of the Geo Reserve. They say Lot 10 has also been equitized in a joint venture project between the DENR and the Blue Star since 2002. The foundation, together with Blue Star, have been protecting the area against, quote, professional squatters.
Masungi notes that Lot 10 is part of several protected and conservation areas in the country. They said the site is also mountainous, and they say that would make it geologically unbuildable. On top of that, they say the development of the site will be financially prohibitive and will, quote, have expensive consequences for the environment. The Bureau of Corrections, meanwhile, is confirming in a statement that the Masungi Geo Reserve will be used as its headquarters. This would include the site's residential uses for personnel and employees and the implementation of development plans.
Here to talk to us more about the matter, we have with us on the show Ann Dumaliang, Managing Trustee of the Masungi Geo Reserve. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening.
Okay, and first of all, I've been studying this issue and the rights also in Tanay. It's a special protected area, and now they're saying that the Bucor has a newly minted title. I understand it's not that easy to get a title. So how do you think this was done?
That's also something that we hope will be investigated. As early as 2002, like what we've mentioned, it's already subject to a joint venture agreement with Blue Star, which is our mother firm that has been restoring that area since then, and for decades now. As early as 2009, the Secretary of DENR has also made the direction for the area clear, asking for the Bilibid prison to be moved to a different site because it is already subjected to private rights and to prior projects. So the follow-through there is really something that we want to look at. This direction was already given to the DENR regional director during that time, who also happens to be the current regional director for the area. So we hope that that one is closed and investigated on a little more.
But just to be clear on that, Anne, and just to clarify, you said that as early as 2009, you had already tried to communicate, not pushing through, if I understand that correctly, with plans to relocate or to use the area by the Bureau of Corrections. Did we get that right?
That is something that we have communicated as early as 2006 when we heard about the proclamation.
Okay.
And this is already something communicated by DENR by 2009 in many of its documents and correspondences.
Okay, and then but I asked just to clarify because while we do try to clarify ownership, how they got the title and all of that, I'm sure, plus the environmental impact matters. for that matter. What that essentially also means is that this is not necessarily a new topic. That as early as 2006 or 2009, there were already, at the very least on the table, concepts or suggestions that this is something that the Bureau of Corrections had been considering, and that you are aware of this as early as then.
Yes, but it never exactly became an issue, no? Because the proclamation itself says that it will respect private rights. So it only started surfacing as an issue this 2022. We've been seeing movements, and ito nga ultimately leading to a freshly minted title just this September 2022. So this is really all coming at the heels of really being able to close down the quarry just early this February. And, you know, many of the other land speculation incidents that have happened in recent time. So it also is really quite alarming, no, the timing and the circumstances around it, considering that for over a decade now, this has been a quiet and to an extent a resolved issue, no?
Now, in the meantime, the Department of Environment, Natural Resources seems to be at the center of all of this. Not only is it the authority that should be concerned about environmental impact, but also in terms of the titling of this. Have you spoken with the Department of Environment, and what did they say?
We haven't had a chance to speak with the department or the department secretary. This is something that we've been calling for some time now, particularly convening the oversight committee and appointing an appropriate project manager for the Masungi Geopark project, which should be able to help us deal with all of these coordinations, process the permits necessary, conduct enforcement in the area, which we know have been, you know, the issues surrounding the area in recent time. No? So once that project manager is appointed, a lot of these issues should be, you know, much easier to deal with and resolve. We also really call on Secretary Yulo to look into this a bit more and really speak with us, because as far as our documentation goes, the last DNR secretary to convey communication on this, which was Secretary Atienza, was clear that the Bilibid prison site must be moved to a different location.
Tell us all about Lot 10. If the Bucor puts up a penitentiary here or their general headquarters, what could exactly be in danger?
Well, what we're endangering really is the bulk of the rock spine of the karst formation. So, bulk of the rock spine is found inside Lot 10. This is why we say it's not buildable. It's a lot of pinnacle karst formations, very pointed rocks, no? And for you to be able to develop that area to an extent, you will have to level or at least extract those rocks somehow, no? So we don't know how that could potentially work with all of the overlapping protected area and conservation mechanisms issued for that zone, for this particular area. What will also really stand to lose is already a globally acclaimed project for reforestation and restoration that demonstrates what can be done in record time to resolve the climate crisis. And considering that climate action is supposed to be, you know, one of the pillars of the BBM administration, we're hopeful that they could lend their support to this cause and that they'd be able to put their foot down. We're hopeful with General Tapang, he's new in his role. We're hopeful that this admin will take it seriously, given that climate action is one of its pillars.
How were the conversations now with the Bucor, with General Katapang? Because I believe that there were reports of an attack on your rangers back in 2021. How is your team's safety?
Oh, it's been quite dangerous for us in the field since then. That's why we've always been calling for that oversight committee to be constituted, because it doesn't have to be this way. We have been in this area complementing government's financing gap, monitoring gap on the ground. And we can definitely do more if we work together towards that end. It's dangerous for us each time there is this information shared by our leaders insinuations about the legality of the memorandum of agreement, or insinuating that the joint venture agreement is canceled, whatever has just been thrown around, no, without legal standing. These really embolden environmental detractors on the ground to do something illegal. So the most recent attempt happened immediately after the congressional hearing, no, where we heard certain undersecretaries say that they are assailing certain components of the memorandum of agreement.
Okay, Ann Dumalyang, maraming salamat. In other news, the Philippine government has ordered heightened patrols in our maritime territory following the laser pointing incident in Ayungin Shoal.
China insists that the device was a mere speed detector and that there are other forces trying to provoke tension with the Philippines. Maricel Harili with a big story.
This is Philippine Coast Guard, PRP Teresa Magbanua, MRRV 9701. You are sailing within Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone.
This was the radio challenge of the Philippine Coast Guard on a Vietnamese-flagged fishing vessel caught fishing in Recto Bank last February 9. Recto Bank is in the West Philippine Sea and is within our exclusive economic zone. After the warning, the foreign vessel immediately left our territory. The Foreign Affairs Department says this is part of the efforts to increase the country's presence in our EEZ, following the Chinese Coast Guard's alleged use of a military-grade laser against the Philippine Coast Guard in Ayungin Shoal.
No less than the President has called attention, serious concern about the increasing frequency and intensity of actions that are happening in West Philippine Sea.
However, China insists that only a handheld laser was used and that it was only meant to measure the speed and distance of other vessels.
It was not military-grade laser. You know, that's actually this ship, the Chinese Coast Guard ship, is not equipped with any military-grade lasers. What they used was just the kind of laser speed detector.
The DFA has since stood by the account of the Philippine Coast Guard and has called on China to refrain from disrupting peace in the region.
We're calling on China that to cease and restrain from this action kasi hindi lang ho ito damaging, this dangerous, it is also destabilizing in terms of the peace and stability in the region.
But for Ambassador Wang Silian, there are other parties seeking to steer trouble between the Philippines and China.
Whenever China-Philippines relations are improving, there are always some forces inciting trouble. Whenever there is an instance at sea, what they do is not to persuade and promote negotiation and peace, but to provoke confrontations.
On the diplomatic front, Daza said the Philippines and China were able to talk this week about some maritime concerns. However, the DFA has yet to give details on their discussion. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
The Philippines and China are at opposite ends over this laser pointing incident, but why is it important to determine whether it was a navigation pointer or a military-grade laser that was used against the Philippine Coast Guard? Well, under the 1995 UN Protocol on Laser Weapons, it's prohibited to use any such equipment in combat if it's for the sole purpose of blinding one's enemy. The UN agreement says this act of war causes unnecessary suffering. But through the years, lasers have been used in a multitude of ways. It's used, for example, as a targeting system for bombs and a rangefinder for armored vehicles. As a weapon, high-powered lasers like the ones used by the United States can actually shoot down small aircraft. China has denied using military-grade laser against the Philippine Coast Guard, but defense experts note some inconsistencies with China's statement. Laser rangefinders, for example, are usually not seen by the naked eye. In this case, the laser had cast a bright green light. The Philippine Coast Guard is also questioning why China would supposedly rely on a handheld device when modern radar systems are available.
Coming right up, the SOGI Equality Bill is seeing delays at the Senate due to concerns raised by some religious groups. Bataan Representative Geraldine Roman will be joining us for a discussion when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. The sponsorship of the Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Expression and Sex Characteristics or SOGI bill has been stalled in the Senate due to the opposition from several religious groups and various sectors. Here's what we know. The Senate bill was reverted to the committee level after Senate Majority Leader Joel Villanueva presented piles of letters from concerned religious groups at the Senate session last Wednesday. Villanueva showed the letters from various religious groups who claimed they were not consulted during the technical working group meetings, or that they wanted more chances to participate in the discussions on the proposed measure. Villanueva said that an option would be to refer the bill to the Committee on Rules, which he chairs, for further study. Senator Risa Hontiveros, SOGI bill author and Committee on Women chair, yielded to having more consultations on the bill, but said this should still be done under her committee and not the Committee on Rules.
The SOGI bill, which seeks to shield the LGBTQIA+ community from discrimination, has been languishing in Congress for more than 2 decades. The bill hurdled the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality last December 6, with a committee report signed by 19 senators. Once a bill passes the committee level, the next step is for it to be sponsored at the Senate plenary. But over at the House of Representatives, Villanueva's father, Sibak Party List Representative Brother Eddie Villanueva, also tried to delay the hearing for the SOGI bill. He's claiming that it was illegal in the form of forum shopping by the Committee on Women, Gender, and Gender Equality. Villanueva claims that the SOGI bill was possibly being railroaded, as the Committee on Human Rights was already discussing the more comprehensive anti-discrimination bill. Here to share with us her thoughts on all of this, we have with us live via Zoom House Committee on Women and Gender Equality Chairperson, Bataan 1st District Representative Geraldine Roman. Congresswoman Roman, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening to our viewers.
Congresswoman, maybe you could frame this, first of all, frame this on 2 fronts. No? On the one hand, as we said, it's been more than 2 decades that people have been talking about this. Now we come to this, to where we are right now. But over the 2 decades and over the past few years, how close have we gotten to actually finally getting this passed? And how far do these latest developments hold this back again?
Well, how far have we gotten? way back in the 17th Congress, we were able to pass the SOGI Equality Bill in the lower house by a unanimous vote. And in the upper house, it was already at the committee level. But in my opinion, some delaying tactics were employed by certain senators. During that time, they would enlist themselves for interpellation at the floor, but they never showed up. And that happened for an indefinite period of time until the 17th Congress end. Now, if that is not a delaying tactic, I don't know what is. So what is our present status right now? We have the numbers, both in the lower house and in the upper house. You see, the last 23 years have served to open the eyes of our legislators to what the SOGI Equality Bill really is and what it is not. In other words, hindi na po tumatalab yung fear-mongering and rumor-mongering na ginagawa po ng mga taong kumukontra sa SOGI Equality Bill. We all know that this is not a same-sex marriage bill. This is simply an anti-discrimination bill which seeks to protect Filipinos, whether LGBT or straight, from discrimination at the workplace, in learning institutions, in the delivery of government services, as well as in commercial and public establishments. Yun lang po yun.
You have
Robbie?
clearly gotten a lot of support in both houses over the past years. How is it possible? You're talking about delaying tactics by a few members. The Villanuevas, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, obviously key players in standing against this. But if the support is there in both chambers, how is it possible that a few players can basically stand in its way?
You know what? The delaying tactics I was referring to was way back in the 17th Congress. Now, at this point, we are in the 19th Congress. It is still impossible to determine if the developments can be considered delaying tactics. We will base our judgment on the results of the recent developments in the Senate. I don't know what's going to happen. There are two possibilities. Number one, that senators will step up and allow the SOGI Equality Bill its fair share of time in the Committee on Rules, which is headed by Senator Joel Villanueva. I hope that, as he said, he will be listening to the different groups, whether in favor or against the SOGI Equality Bill. But what cannot happen is that that committee meeting or those hearings will turn into Bible sharing sessions. When we engage in discussions in the committee level, it should be constructive. The resource person should be very concrete and pinpoint which provisions they don't want and which provisions have to be amended, and we have to reach a consensus. This is how we do our work in Congress constructively. Hindi lang po yung killing time. So, titingnan natin kung magla-level up po ang ating mga senador. If they will use their brains and their ability to engage in intelligent debate, or if they choose to resort to delaying tactics.
Congresswoman, Senator Joel Villanueva can be quoted to be saying, we value family, our family code. Gusto yata nila ng same-sex marriage, so wag na tayong maglokohan. Is it what they're asking for? A lot of this information has been going around about this bill. Can you clear with us exactly what this SOGI bill will bring to our LGBTQIA family and also to the heterosexual community?
Yes. Well, we also value the family. LGBTQ plus people also have families. And in fact, when you commit acts of discrimination against an LGBTQ plus person, you deprive them of work, you deprive them of the opportunity to work, you are in fact also affecting his family. You are actually condemning that person's family to to poverty. And also, you are discriminating against that family. Nevertheless, I want to point out that, again, the SOGI Equality Bill is not a same-sex marriage bill. Kaya nga hindi ko maintindihan why he keeps on insisting and mentioning this. This is not a mantra that by repeating, it will come true. You know what? As legislators, we all know that for something to happen through a law, it has to be explicitly expressed in that bill or law. Pero suyurin nyo man, wala ho talaga ang same-sex marriage bill sa SOGIE Equality Bill. On the contrary, we have a provision that indicates that in the issuance of professional licenses, there should be no discrimination. And these licenses do not refer to marriage licenses. Ganyan po ka-sensitive ang SOGIE Equality Bill sa mga religious sensibilities. But of course, religious freedom cannot be used as a blanket excuse to discriminate against fellow Filipinos. We have to uphold the Constitution, which should be the sole basis of our laws.
Hi, Congresswoman, on the question of consultation, they're saying that many groups were not consulted, particularly they said some religious groups. Is that a valid complaint, or does that fall under delaying tactics?
Oh, that is a very valid complaint. In fact, Senator Risa Ontiveros yielded to that concern, and she was willing to hear those individuals who wanted to testify, whether in favor or against the SOGIE Equality Bill, in her committee, which is the Committee on Women and Gender Equality, where this bill has traditionally and historically been heard. Now, what surprises me is that now it has been referred to the Committee on Rules. It does not make sense. I do not see the logic behind that. Nevertheless, it is my hope that within the Committee on Rules, they will tackle the bill. They will not sit on it. And I hold on to the promises made by the Senate leadership that the intention of referring it to the Committee on Rules is not to archive the bill, but to allow it more time for discussion. Of course, that doesn't mean for an indefinite period of time. I mean, they have to be constructive and efficient in their work, like what we intend to do in the lower house.
Okay, Congresswoman Roman, maraming salamat po. House Committee on Women and Gender Equality, Congresswoman Geraldine Roman. Now, more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Is there a difference between dasal and panalangin? If you think about it, there may be no difference between the two words. Both are meant as ways of communicating with God.
However, for the Education Department, there is a distinction. Panalangin is referred to our requests and gratitude to the Lord that come from our hearts and mind, which therefore is seen as more heartfelt. On the other hand, dasal refers to the words that repeatedly come out of our mouths. Now, these are the prayers that we have memorized, such as the Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory Be, and others. Because of this, DepEd recently amended one of the terms in the National Pledge, Panatang Makabayan, following the recommendation of experts and linguists. Under Department Order Number 4, the word in nagdarasal was replaced by nananalangin. Apart from inclusivity, experts said the amended term is considered well-written, sufficiently rationalized, more solemn, and extensively researched.
According to DLSU professor David Michael San Juan, dasal comes from a Spanish term, rezar, or to pray, while dalangin or panalangin is a full-on Filipino term. But like Professor San Juan, many are questioning the priorities of the Department of Education, citing many other issues in the education sector that deserve more attention. And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make your free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.